Yeah, and I think another thing that points out to me here in Paul's writing is he says, I, therefore, prisoner of the Lord, urge you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling to which you have been called, with humility and gentleness, with patience, and all that good stuff. I think of Moses, when God called him to lead his people out of Egypt, and this being fitting, like this also a fitting thought because we're in the midst of Exodus 90 again. But I think of him when he thinks that he totally thinks he's incapable of doing such a thing. Who is who is he to do such a thing? And it's something we learned from Exodus, and one of the readings that stuck out to me more so this time around doing it was the whole saying of God doesn't give you anything you can't handle, is so false, because it's true. You can't handle it. Like, you really can't handle it. And if you keep going, if God gives you something and you go the way and try to achieve it in your own way with your own pride, you might do it, but it might not be as fruitful, or you might not even be able to do it. You have to understand that when he presents something to you as like a challenge or something of that grand scheme, that you have to just put your trust in him. So that's when it says like to walk in a manner worthy of the calling to which you've been called, it's really, it's what God's calling you to be. But if you put your trust in him, if you put your faith in him, if you humbly do those things, so that kind of spoke to me in that sense as well.
Amen, bro. That's a great callback to the book of Exodus, and Moses is a great example of humility. Eventually, like he grows in it, because there's a lot of times that he almost questions God's calling for him, and it goes back to this verse, in a manner worthy of the calling in which you have been called. Moses was one of the ultimate callings in all of biblical history, and many times he's like, Lord, they're not even listening to me. How is it possible? But it's about humbling ourselves before the Lord, knowing that he knows better than us, and whatever he's calling us to. So the ultimate version of who God has called us to be is he's calling us to humility where we are in his plan for us, and just to be his children, like just to be in the palm of his hand so that he can lead us. He's we're not capable of doing it. He's the one who's capable. So humbling ourselves in order to do that.
Yeah, I keep thinking about like Moses going to Pharaoh and like God telling him to go each time. He's like, I gotta go talk to this guy again. Like, like, oh my gosh, like, I barely could do it last week. It's just funny.
It's obedience too. Humility. Part of humility is being obedient, because it's like submitting ourselves to an authority higher than ourselves, whether it be like in our jobs, like at work. Like, there's someone who has been there longer than us, and we submit to that authority. Or in the grand scheme of things, in other ways too, our parents, our spouses, one day, us both, being called to that vocation maybe one day, and ultimately God, ultimately the Lord is submitting ourselves to his authority because he knows better, So when he tells Moses to go for the 10th time to Pharaoh, he submits to that. He humbles himself, because the Lord knows better, and ultimately, it led to their freedom. So, this is really practical advice that Paul leaves us with. That's following the theme of what we've been doing, and what Paul says about is this practicality that Paul leaves us with. So it's really awesome.
I'll never be alone. I'm with you. Closer to my heart than I knew.